Start recording. Sonra buraya git. Sonra büyüt. So, welcome. Any questions? Okay. I'm going to continue since we have left. Starting by Aristo and Hellenistic times, people believed that the earth was flat. Although some thinkers thought that it was round, others said, if it is round, if you go far away, you will fall down. Because underside of the earth cannot sustain you, because they didn't know what gravity is. Okay? They thought the gravity is one directional everywhere. So that's why people believed it has to be flat, because otherwise you will fall down. Starting with the Copernic, Earth-centered model is dismissed, and he put the sun at the center, Earth somewhere else, as we just showed last week. But he was also a religious person, but it wasn't a popular news at the time, so nothing much happened in terms of wider audience. It is Galileo who actually defended the rotation of the earth and rotation of the earth around sun and the sun-centered sun-centered solar system, etc. Furthermore, human body was sacred. You couldn't touch. Indians burnt them, right? Egyptians mummified them. It was also sacred. But since mummification is a sacred operation and also an intrusive operation, most medical knowledge accumulated at the early days in Egyptians, because their religious rituals deals with the body of the person. The rest, especially Christianity, the body was too sacred, nobody could touch it. You immediately put it down under the ground. Indians burn, you know. So some scientists up to that time worked on human body. I wouldn't say scientists, but people worked on human body behind closed doors. It was forbidden. It was against the law. It was against the religion. So they tried to cut the arm of the dead people, of course, and try to learn how it is working. Then around 1500, these kind of books of dead people or executed people, it started to be studied. One of the guys is Vesalius, around mid-16th century. It was very dark in those times. I mean, everything was forbidden. And they realized that, again in 16th century and 17th century, they realized that the blood is circulating, and the heart is pumping, etc. So they started to investigate the body. So think about it. It is not that early. It is after the Fatih Sultan Mehmet. right? So there were also thinkers, philosophers and scientists together. People started to think, and then we call them philosophers. Francis Bacon had a lot of contributions in compass, pusula, gunpowder, barut, and printing. Magnetization of the Earth is found around 1600. Although the compass was around, the more detailed study of the Earth's magnetization is done around 1600. Then, and again in early 17th century, as you see, compared to the average age of a person in those years, he lived long. So around 78 years. So it's quite an old person. Most people were able to live until 35 or 40. Then you die after some disease or something broken, and you can't go any further. We don't know. That means we don't know how much we will live in future. Today's average life is around 70s. In developed countries, it is a little bit longer. But from 100 years from now, maybe it can increase about 10 more years or 20 more years. So he was, as I said, he was entered to the university as a medical student, then made a pass to mathematics. He studied a lot of things. He improved the telescope. Talked about moons of the Jupiter, Milky Way, etc. Supported heliocentrism, and also experiment with falling bodies. 1/2. It's not 1/2 GT square, but well, it leads to a heavy ball and relatively light ball drops at the same speed. So the size of the ball doesn't affect the time to travel from, I think, from Tower of Pisa to the bottom. It takes same amount of time for big ball, heavy ball, and small ball. Obviously, if you throw a thin paper, it will fly because of the friction, but relatively heavy two things drop at the same amount of time. So that means something else. He probably thought that about gravity of the Earth, because Earth is round. Okay, Earth is round, rotating around itself. So that could be the logic. He studied moon and the things on the moon, etc. He get into argument with the church. Towards the end of the, after explaining that the Earth is rotating around the sun, it was against the church. It was against the Bible at that time, even today. Then he sentenced a home prison sentence. He was very popular. Judges, Inquisition judges couldn't give full prison punishment, although he was in for some time. but it turned out to be he was in home prison somewhere to the end of the end of his life. At the same time, there were thinkers, late 16th century and early 17th century. Descartes first invented Cartesian coordinates. We have Cartesian in Turkish, Cartesian. We have Cartesian coordinates because of Descartes. Okay, so philosophy, mathematics, etc. He said knowledge is possible, and that mathematically based scientific knowledge of the material world is possible. We can understand the world by science, he said. Before that, we were told, so people were telling you that the universe is made up of 7 layers. The first layer is the earth, second layer is something, third layer is the sun, etc. So that was, I am wrong, so the names are different. There were first heaven, second heaven. They used the word heaven, heavens and stars, etc. Anyway, so before him and before his age, before his time, people were getting information by others. So somebody tells you. And it is usually religious people. So religious people that say that earth is like that, they believe it. Nobody taught, or they say you are born as slave. You have to be slave. Nobody questions it because you are slave. Or they say you are selected guy, you are rich, baron, etc. They say, okay, I am baron, I have to act like baron. They don't question it. So questioning and trying to understand started around that time. I wouldn't say it is only because of the Descartes, and if Descartes didn't live, it wouldn't be possible. Probably will be possible, but Descartes was one of the key people to express that. And one of the famous words of his is, I think, therefore I am. So, cogito ergo sum, meaning that düşünüyorum, öyleyse varım. So, it could be very simple in English or Turkish or whatever, but actual meaning is your existence as a human can only be taught. You are only existent as a human. Kapıyı kapasana ya. You are only existent as a human if you are a thinking body. If you don't think, you don't exist. You are just like an animal. So that is what he says. So the definition of being, he says, is associated by thinking and reasoning. If you don't think, if you don't question, and if you only obey the existing rules without thinking, that means you are animal. You don't exist. Your existence, human existence, is equal to thinking. And that is what cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am, tells. So this is not my opinion, this is general explanation of the word. I think therefore I am. He was Catholic, but he was rejected a lot of things according to scientific and philosophical knowledge. So he argued a lot of things. And today he talked about the universe as well. So Cartesian coordinates, three-dimensional or two-dimensional, whatever, is invented by Descartes and named for Descartes. Although Descartes and other philosophers established spaces for coexistence between science and religion because it was very difficult. They as I said last time, most scientists were priests because they are the only one who can read and write and have time to think about. Others were forced to work. They were either slaves or rich people. They have their, or soldiers. So nobody thinks, nobody reads, writes, etc. So only philosophers are mostly, those bright people are mostly from church. And as they think, obviously they couldn't immediately separate church and science. They find ways to explain things without digression too much. So they found a way to make it coexistent. It took a lot of time, like 300 years, to achieve a understandable separation between science and religion. Otherwise, it was all intermixed. Up until Darwin, which was very recent, general understanding of the world came from the Bible and church doctrine from the Western world. In the Eastern world, in Japan, in Islamic world, it was a little bit different. Although in the Middle East, they generally look like each other. But for example, in Japan, it is different. In India, it's different. In this respect, truth had been revealed. That was the thing I was telling you. It was the revelation through the Bible and through the Christ. So there was no need to question that. So if the Bible says Earth is at the center of the solar system, you have to believe it. So starting Descartes and Galileo probably, they started to think and they said it is incorrect. And this set of beliefs meant that people were highly resistant to evidence to the contrary, even went so far to create elaborate explanations to fit contradictions into religious belief. So they have to fit that into the religious belief because they were religious people themselves. So they have to adapt it, actually. They had to adapt it without that much contradiction. One was, in our book, it is not as explicit, so we are lucky. But in the Bible, it is explicit, so contradictions are more prominent. In the Old Genesis, Old Testament, yes. In the Old Testament part, it says God created earth in 6 days. So that's why we use 7-day calendar in humanity, because 4 times 7 makes a lunar month, and we have 12 months in a year, because it is associated with the rotation of the earth around sun, the seasons, etc. So it is automatic. And the creation thing was always centered around earth and the person. And basically it was focused to the man rather than woman. The second thing which was challenged in 16th century was age of the earth. Age of the earth was believed to be 6,000 years old, according to the Jewish Bible, Old Testament. According to the Jewish Bible, it was 6,000 years ago. Nobody questioned it because it was 6,000 years ago. Some priests said, sometime in the early days, then people believed it. Then in the 17th century, mid-17th century, one of the guys tried to calculate the start of the universe based on the stories and names of the prophets, calculating names of the prophets. So he probably lived 60 years than the son of the guy. So he probably tried to go back to Adam and calculated the day of creation, Sunday, October 23, 4004 BC. So that was around 6,000 years. But it was a good study. The reason is, it is not accepted as it is, but he was trying to calculate it. He was trying to use historical evidence, okay? Historical evidence, stories, etc. So combine and find when was the creation. So that was one of the important attempts to question how old the earth is. Second, first one was the creation. Second was the Nuh, the great flood. So was there a great flood or not? And if there was a great flood, how? It was believed very strongly. And fourth one was, all the species were fixed since 6,000 years. Since 6,000 years, every species were fixed, and it's not changing. People challenged it and realized that species are changing, evolving. Some species are lost, some new species are generated, and it is moving. Although, at the same time, they understand that selective breeding, like British dog breeders, there are many different dogs around, because interbreeding, selective breeding or artificial breeding works. One guy, now we are moving to the end of the 17th century, proposed that, he was also a religious guy, we have to study science in order to understand God. So he, instead of making an opposite statement, he proposed to study biology, to study other pieces of science, to understand the creation and to understand God. So he proposed that religious duty is to study science. Okay, and it is interesting. He spent a lot of time studying biology and categorizing organisms. Living things showed adaptations in their environments, and he said it was the God design to be to adapt. So he probably said, in sense, evolution is the God's creation, so we have to study it. There was another guy, Lino. He was only classification. Ray began to use classification to address questions in physiology, function, and behavior. So outcomes are also studied by John Ray. It was beginning of the 18th century. Kanuni, Sultan Süleyman, etc. So those years. Okay, the largest size of the Ottoman Empire in those years. Another 30 years, 30, 40 years, in Italy. Italy was the center of the culture because of the trade. Torricelli made an experiment to understand, by understanding the air pressure. So the pressure that we feel is the air on top of us. This is the weight of the air above us, as if we are in the water. How many of you can swim? Okay, if you go down, well, you should swim. If you go down, the pressure increases. So that pressure is the weight of the water above you. As you go deeper, pressure increases per centimeter square. So he made a empty, completely full mercury container, turned it upside down like this, and there was a vacuum. Completely empty area. So that elevation is provided by the atmospheric pressure exerted on the mercury, not through the vacuum. He first did it with water, then tried to find a heavier liquid. A heavy liquid was the mercury, so he used the mercury to make it shorter. So how much shorter, do you remember? 76 centimeters. How much water do you remember? I think it is 10 point something, if I'm correct. Can you check? How much? Silahlarınızı çekin. Ten something, I think. So that's why kaç kişi tulumba kullandı? 10.5 ya. Yeah. Bir şey mi söyleyeceksin? Ha? Ha. Tamam. Kaç kişi tulumba kullandı? 1, 2, 3. Tamam. Tulumba kullanırken suyun ne kadar yakında olması lazım? Yerden yere uzaklığının alttaki 10,5 metrede çalışmamaya başlıyor. Çünkü vakum oluşmaya başlıyor. Siz bastığınızda vakum oluşuyor, yok oluyor. Vakum oluşuyor, yok oluyor. Su duruyor olduğu yerde. 10,5'tan daha yakın olursa çalışıyor. Bunu engellemek için tulumbanın mekanizmasını uzun bir çubukla borunun içinde aşağı indiriyorlar. O zaman olmuyor. Çünkü suya olan mesafenin 10,5'tan daha az olması lazım. Böyle pıt pıt çekebilmen için. Aynı şekilde motorla çekim yaptığınızda, santrifüj motorla çekim yaptığınızda motorun türbini suya 10,5 metreden, hatta 10,5'da efficiency düşüyor. 6-7 metreden daha uzaksa motor suyu çekmemeye başlıyor. Ne yapıyorlar? Kuyu kazıyorlar. Motoru indiriyorlar aşağıya. Boruyla yukarı şey yapıyorlar. Çünkü output'ta sorun yok. Input'ta sorun var. Oraya iniyorlar. Sonra orada bir de metan gazı çıkıyor. Zehirlenip orada ölüyorlar biliyorsunuz. Kuyuda. Çiftçilerin öldüğü kazaları bilirsiniz. Kuyuda diğeri kurtarmaya gider, o da ölür. Üçüncüsü de ölür falan. 4. hastanelik olur en son artık. Ambulans gelir falan. Çünkü yerde işte metan gazı çıkabiliyor bazı yerlerde ve birikiyor az da olsa. Türbini aşağı indirmeleri gerekiyor. Şimdi yeni teknolojide geniş bir boru koyuyorlar yere. Türbini borunun içine girecek şekilde yapabiliyorlar artık yeni teknoloji. Onu içeri borudan sallıyorlar. Kürekle kazıp aşağı inmek yerine borunun içinde indiriyorlar. Artık bugün mesela Ege bölgesinde eskiden mesela 2 metre olan su miktarı bugün 150 metre, 200 metre, 240 metre gibi, 300 metre gibi yerlerden su çekmeye başlıyorlar. Yeraltı suları çünkü yok oldu. Onu yapabilmek için kuyu da kazamazsın. 300 metre kuyu kazarsan ölürsün. Onu merdivenle inmek mümkün değil. Boruyu yapıp türbini dibine koyuyorlar. Çünkü başka türlü bu sebepten suyu çekmek mümkün değil. Biraz şey oldu ama sapma oldu ama aklınızda olsun. Global warming vesaire de benim çocukluğumda dereden su içerdik. Bildiğin dere. Sonra dere kışın da geçemezdik. O kadar fazlaydı yani. Yani yaya geçemezsin. Sonra kurudu. Sular, tulumbalarımız vardı. Çekerdik falan işte. Kuyu vardı. Pek kullanmazdık ama kuyuda da böyle bakınca su görünürdü falan. Kuyu kurudu. Tulumba çekmemeye başladı. Tulumbanın mekanizmasını aşağı indirmek için sucu çağrıldı. Bir daha bir şeyler yapıldı falan. Bir 3-4 yıl daha çalıştı. Pancar motor vardı yer üzerinde. Pancar motoru çevirirdik. Kolunu çalıştırırdık. Şeyleri sulardık. Tarlayı. Pancar motor çalışmamaya başladı. Pancar motoru aşağı indireyim desen, kuyu kazma aşağı indireyim desen, egzozu var. Motor kendi kendine orada susuyor. Çünkü kendi kendine boğuluyor. Bir de tabii çalıştırıp yukarı kaçman lazım. Çünkü sen de boğulabilirsin. Yani egzozu daha vermeden kaçacaksın yukarı çalıştırıp. Ne yaptılar? Pancar motor yukarıda, türbin aşağıda, arada kasnak var. Power şeyi. Yani kasnak diyelim ki 6 metre aşağıda çalışıyor türbin. Pancar motor yer üzerinde. Kasnakla. Kasnak görmüşsünüzdür. Kayış kasnak sistemi. Elektrik de yok. O aralar Turgut Özal zamanları işte kırsal kesim elektrik deniyor. Neyse elektrik geldi. Tamam pancarlar satıldı gitti. Elektrik motorunu yer üzerinde çalışmıyor tabii artık. Aşağı indirmek zorundasın. Elektrik motorunu aşağı indiriyorsun. 6 metre kazıyorsun, 8 metre kazıyorsun. İşte 10-15 metreden sonra kuyu kazmak zorlaşıyor. İçine insan örerek gitmen lazım. İnsanlar ölmeye başladı sağda solda kuyuda. İşte bu metan gazı sebebiyle. Çıkamıyorsun çünkü dışarıya. Derin kuyu pompası çıktı. Derin kuyu pompası nasıl? 40 metre, 50 metre, 60 metre diye gitti. Şu an bizim tarlamızda 180 metre var. Benim çocukken dereden su içtiğim yerde 180 metrelik şey var. Kuyu var. Bazı yerlerde bu 300'e de çıkıyor Ege bölgesinde. Dolayısıyla ciddi bir global warming ve kuraklık var karşımızda. Burada da bunu söylemiş olayım yani. Ve bu şey değil. Kader değil bu. Bunu biz yapıyoruz. Çünkü biz pamuk yetiştirdik, deli gibi suladık. O kadar çok suladık ki inanamazsınız. Hala öyle. O 180 metreden çekiyoruz, mısır yetiştiriyoruz. Yağmurla mısır büyüten Amerika ile rekabet etmeye çalışıyoruz. Çünkü Amerika'da mısır sulanmıyor. Kendi yağıyor yağmur. Pascal was also conducting the same experiment, and you know the pressure unit is not Torricelli, but it is Pascal. So pressure unit is named after Blaise Pascal. He said the length of the column of the mercury is different in the mountain. That means in the mountain the pressure is lower. In the ground pressure is higher. So that was around again mid 17th century. And in mid 17th century, I think in France, literacy rate is about around 20%, 25% or something, not much. Much more than Turkey, but it is again not much. Boyle, the guy at the end of the 17th century, introduced experimental method in chemistry, natural philosophy. He worked in pressures and pumps, etc. So he invented air pump for the experiments. He invented the Boyle's law for the pressure. You remember from the exam, right? Boyle kuralı. Do you? Also, he was one of the founders in Royal Society of London, the first scientific journal, and that brought public verification of the science. So you publish your work, other scientists say that is incorrect, that can't be done. So either reject it or accept it. So scientific publication method is started to be used by mid 17th century. And science was kind of a descendant of magic in those years. So there wasn't any laboratory like that. So people were working in the experiment. Some rich guys come in and they do the experiment, get astonished. So it was kind of between fun, magic, and curiosity together. It wasn't like today. Then another 60, 70 years, one generation later, British literacy started to improve probably because of the geographical expansion. He studied theory of light, theory of motion, Newton laws, gravity, and he had a good book named Principia Mathematica, and discusses a lot of things. It is available on the internet, so you can download and check out Principia Mathematica. If you don't understand, use ChatGPT to convert it to today's English. It's more understandable then, or Turkish. He also, as everybody else, everybody was trying to convert some other substance to the gold. Everybody was trying to make gold, even today. So it was named as alchemy, but it also led to the invention of other things, because you are doing experiments, you are trying to find gold, but you find something else, and that is also invention. Yes, I explained this actually. Gül'ün Adı diye bir film vardı. Öldü gitti bu adam da. James Bond. 1300'leri anlatıyor. Orada bunu anlıyorsun. Şeyde de anlıyorsun. Neydi? Mel Gibson'ın bir filmi vardı. Braveheart mı? Galiba Braveheart. İnsanlar düşünmüyorlar. Ne denirse yapıyorlar. Ve öyle bir halk var. Tamamen böyle şey sürüsü gibi. Yani koyun sürüsü demeyeceğim de başka bir dünya yani. Bugünkü gibi değil. Ve ilk o zaman işte method of authority ilk başta. Authority ne söylüyorsa o. Hiçbir zaman öyle bir başka bir şansın yok yani. Mısır'dan beri öyle. Belki daha evvelden de öyle. Biraz ilerliyor filozofi falan işte Yunan. Method of logic. Deductive reasoning'le. Bu böyleyse bu da böyledir falan. Çünkü kafa çalışıyor, durmuyor. Üçüncüsü, the third one is the scientific method. So the scientific method is inductive reasoning plus experimentation. Bunları hızlı geçeyim. Scientific method is made up of 4 steps. One, you find something interesting, noticing a phenomenon, then formulating testable explanations. You will have an hypothesis. It must be this. Second, doing experimentation, or if it is not experimentable thing, collecting data, observation. The last one is refining, making conclusion, and retesting explanations. So then your scientific progress can be achieved. Scientific method is tedious and time-consuming, but it is the most widely accepted methodology for acquiring knowledge about the world today. First is the curiosity. You will see it. Curiosity, hypothesis, experimentation, and explanation. Okay? Explain this. So always, in order to get better results, always try to question what you have. You collected data. For example, I will ask a debatable question now. Do you think female students are more successful in engineering than men? Okay, so you might have some, anybody, for anybody. Not because I am trying to say something about it, I am trying to motivate you to understand and to think. If I only take this class and measure your grades and make a conclusion, it could be the fact that females are much better or males are better. Okay? So either one. And I may conclude that, okay, in the world, female students are better. So, but I as a scientific method following person, I should ask myself, does this class represent the world? It might be this case in our class, but can I generalize it? So I should always ask questions. Is it because of Gebze? Is it because we are in Turkey? Is it because in our Turkish culture, female students are encouraged more to study and males are less encouraged to study and they go to work earlier, so, or they are more haylaz, okay? So they don't push hard as hard as the female counterparts, so then females are, so there are a lot of questions and variables, those are variables, to think about. So the first data I get may not have the actual answer, and it could be wrong. Therefore, I need to do experiments, additional experiments. I should always question, and I should be aware of my limitations when I am doing the experiment. So generalization is a dangerous thing in science unless you are very proficient. That causes serious trouble at the further edge. We call it anecdotal evidence. Anecdotal evidence means I have a friend, female friend, who is very good in engineering, but I have another uncle, he is shit, right? So therefore, females are better. One uncle and one female relative makes you go to the conclusion. It is wrong, of course. Or you have a study in Turkey, for example. The number of female students in university is like 40% versus 60%. And in the population, females are like 50%, 51%, males are 49%, something like that, very close to each other. So the question is why it is different in universities, maybe. You may say, that is not true. Why? Because in my class, we have 75% females. That is anecdotal evidence. That is the thing only you see. So we, as a scientific method, we can't do it. So we have to know our limitations. We have to know the range of our data. Generally, we will have assumptions and research strategy method, and we will move to design. You generally have some explanations explanations based on the observation. You design the research, do experiments, and then make a conclusion. Without philosophical assumptions, without previous knowledge, you cannot say, I want to learn if there is a relation in between A and B. I want to learn if there is a relation between shoe size of the person and the grade. So those people who have bigger foot can get more grades in computer science. You can ask that question, but only asking question is not enough. You should have an explanation in behind, meaning that, such as, Bigfoot is related to bigger blood flow, larger blood flow pumps the more blood in the brain, so brain functions better. So that kind of explanation leads to you to design a research so that you measure it. If you don't have any idea, it is probably an incorrect design, because you have to have a background information, such as, again, if you have a big foot, relatively big foot in your family, or if your height is relatively big, that means your nutrients, as you grow, you're fed good. Your mother fed you well. Probably your brain is also developed better. That's a hypothesis. And you can test that hypothesis. You can get a result. And the result is true. If you are fed well in your childhood, your brain develops better, your cognitive abilities develop better, and your body size also is bigger. It's a known fact. Because they tested it. They first, you cannot refute that you cannot refute that by saying, I have a family member who is very short and intelligent. No, that is not the thing. That it is the generalization. You have to make big experiment with multiple people, a lot of people, so that it could, there is a statistical way of doing it, it could mean something for the population. Okay? Yeah. And Douglas Engelbart, the inventor of the mouse and personal computer, and many other things in computing, personal computing, says the key thing about all the world's big problems that they have to be dealt collectively. So you have to get together and make projects. Otherwise, we are in trouble, he said. So collective work is very important. I said this, but first you notice the problem, then describe the results, what kind of results I will be expecting. Then get the information, think of solutions, choose the best solution, implement the solution, evaluate the results, and do it again. Keep doing it. And who is this? Turgut Özal. Turgut Özal was famous with the computer usage. He was very into computers. He was from İTÜ, electrical engineering, and he had a Macintosh as well. When people were visiting him, he was at the same time playing with the computer, so saying, talk. So, but he was paying attention to the computer. That was one of the fun stories about him. But he was well aware of the progress in the computer science and the connectivity. The internet was connected in Turkey at his time. Electricity was developed at a very great rate. I remember that in the summer house, I remember that we didn't have electricity. We didn't have refrigerators because we didn't have electricity. Why am I saying it? Because scientific progress can only be achieved by the leadership. If the leaders don't want scientific progress, then it doesn't. In medieval Europe, for example, scientific progress was something like race between small kings. This king was hosting and feeding certain scientists, opening a university. Other king says, the other king, my competitor king was opened a university, we should open another university, okay? So that kind of leadership and race among was one of the reasons that they had so many early universities in Europe. In China today, regional municipalities have governors. Çin'de yok governor, vali. Bizdekine benziyor. Those have more authority than our walis. They are like kings in China. As far as I read from an article. They have a lot of authority, local governments. It is not local government, but local governor. And they have competition among each other. Think about Istanbul Valisi is competing with Kocaeli Valisi in everything. Because they are like kings. They are not reporting back to Ankara too much. So they are like local kings. And they are competing. And they try to improve science, technology, export technology, welfare in their region to make it better than the other one. Okay, all of the Chinese governors. And they also have authority. The article was saying that that is one of the reasons that China is improving so fast, because they have a competition among governors in terms of industry and technology. In our country, governors' main focus is generally not technical development, but cultural development and security, I think, mostly security. Local development is somewhat pushed by belediye başkanları, but also it is not their duties, and they don't have much, they are not like kings. They don't have much money, and they don't have much resources to do that. No authority also. So that is an interesting thing. So leadership is the driving force. For example, today people are thinking about reducing the university to 3 years, right? So that changes everything. Or making it 2 years or 3 years or 4 years changes what you learn. Or are they going to provide incentives for the technology? Today, yes, they are providing a lot of incentives. If they stop providing incentives, like an African country, nobody cares about developing something. In Turkey now, we are trying to develop technology because of the certain incentives. There are incentives, support for the technology, although there are problems, but there is a support. And first university is the University of Constantinople. When? It was in 425. Ne zaman toplandı? İznik Konsili. Hemen şeylere bakın, silahlarınızı çekin. 415 mi? 420 mi?
325.
İznik Konsili 325 mi?
Başlangıç tarihi.
Tamam. Bu şeyi İncil'i 4 taneye indirdikleri toplantının yapıldığı yer. Önümüzdeki haftalarda Papa geliyormuş Türkiye'ye. Oraya gidecekmiş. İznik'e gittiniz mi? İznik'teki o kilise duruyor. İçinde İncil'in 4 taneye indirilen kilise gezilebiliyor. Haberlerden takip edersiniz. En azından virtual gezersiniz. Ama İznik güzel, gölmöl, keyifli bir yer. Arabası olan arkadaşlar olmayanlara götürsün. Yani arada yapabilirsiniz. The first university example was there, and it was basically including research, teaching, auto administration, that is important, and academic independence. So all the properties of modern university was there, and the location was in Sultanahmet, closer to the sea, towards the Kumkapı. Okay, I will have additional slides later. I will show it. They are restoring it. Part of it is being restored today because there is a lot of tourism. And university has 4 goals. That's why it is called university. First is the creation of knowledge, doing research. That is number 1. Okay. Number 2, self-improvement, social development. So here you are going to get older and interact with others, interact with us in a good environment, you will read, write, whatever, then you will be improved as a person. 3, you will have knowledge. Knowledge is valuable. It doesn't have to be the knowledge that you are going to use in your profession. You can learn history, you can learn mathematics, and you will still be driving a taxi, no problem. Your knowledge will be more. 4, you will have the university. University will interact with the public. So it will interact with Istanbul, it will make events, invite people, people will come and listen. So public interaction is also important. Giving profession to students, no. We are not vocational schools. We don't teach how you work. We teach something else in general. This film is good, by the way, from Paul Newman. Neydi adı? Unuttum, sonra hatırladım. We have a web page called Google Scholar. In Google Scholar, the research is indexed. So instead of going Google, you should go to Google Scholar. How many of you know the address of it? Okay, now everybody knows. Scholar.google.com. So scholar.google.com allows you to research science, not the newspapers or Instagram videos. Okay? So go here if you want to learn something. We use it a lot for the research, all the time. And also ACM and IEEE has libraries. ACM is Association for Computing Machinery. IEEE is Institute of Engineers and everything else. No, it is not. Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. But recently, for the last 5 or 6 years, they are also accepting members from other domains, such as mechanical engineering, etc. So they are joking about Institute of Engineers and everything else. Therefore, it's like a scientific organization today, but mostly inclined to computer science and electrical engineering. ACM is only for computing. Okay, so I have 10 more minutes. I will pretend that I started section 2. So in this section, I am going back to Middle East and Mesopotamia. 4,000 years ago. It is important, 4,000 years ago. Magic and science was mixed. You couldn't understand, is it magic or science or religion? They are the same. When the person becomes ill, doctors prescribe magical formulas. Because they don't know what illness is, the person is behaving abnormally, having pain, so probably some external being is affecting it, so some magical things can be helpful. That's what they think. That's what they can do. So earliest prescription kind of things, but we don't know whether it is magical or real, appear in Sumerian time in Middle East. So if the person is doing this, prescribe certain medicine. In Ur kenti var biliyorsunuz. Irak'ta. The medicine guy was known as, in Babylon, probably the earliest, Asipu was the name. The name is not important, so you don't have to memorize or know it. The profession was generally passed from father to son because there was no way of transferring the information in written form. Because the son is always helping the father, since he was 5, he learns what to do. So it is by watching the father. By watching the father, all the professions were taught. Baker's son becomes baker. Farmer's son becomes farmer. Doctor's son becomes doctor. That's even correct. That's even the same today. If your father is doctor, you are more likely to become doctor. Maybe less today, I don't know, because you watch your father having pain, then you don't know the other professions that much. So there was a less frequent recourse was another kind of healer known as Asu, who corresponds more closely to a modern physician and treated physical symptoms using primarily folk remedies like herbs, etc., animal products. So it was more like a regular doctor or technician, whereas Asipu was like hastalık iyileştiren hocalar vardır ya, okuyup üfleyerek. Asipu o.
Bizdeki şaman kültürüne benziyor.
Şaman hastalıkta da şey yapıyor ama şamanda bir de o ibadet tarafı var. Yani tam o değil. Bence değil. Şaman gibi tabii sonuçta. Hastalığı şey yapıyor ama burada hastalık şey. Genelde hareketli o şeyler şamanizmde. Bizde var. Hatta bir tane video vardır. Çeçenlerde dönerek yapılan bir şey var ya. Kafkas değil. Ona uzaktan benzer ama değil. Çeçen zikri diye bir şey var. Dönüyorlar. Durup bir bu tarafa bir bu tarafa dönüyorlar hızlıca. Arada da bir kişi koşturuyor elinde sopayla. Diye onları kumanda ediyor. Şöyle yapacaksın, böyle yapacaksın falan. O aslında İslami gibi görünse de şeyden kalma. Şaman, o herif şaman işte aslında. Ama bugün de yapıyorlar. Başka hiç yok. Belki Moğolistan'da falan olabilir. Kafkaslar'da küçük paketler halinde kaldığı için izole köyler, orada şeyler korunmuş. Birçok çok eski gelenekler korunabiliyor. Mezopotamyalılar da birçok şey bulunuyor. Çanak çömlek yapmayı buluyorlar. Camı buluyorlar. Isıtarak bakıyorlar, cam oluyor ama cam parlak falan, süs. Sabun bulunuyor. Ondan sonra bakır, kalay, bakırla kalayı birleştirince bronz, daha sonra o gerçi de bir 500 sene sonra. Böyle şeyleri var. Su geçirmezlik falan gibi. Sümerlerden niye çok bilgi alabiliyoruz? Sümerlerin tabletleri var. Sümer tabletlerinin ne kadarı çözülmüş? Hemen şeylerinize bakın. Şarjörleri çıkartın. Çok küçüktü. Tam rakamı şimdi sallamayayım. %5 diyeceğim ama bakmak, yani doğrusunu öğrenelim bahaneyle. Evet. Çabuk. Nasıl bir silah çekmek bu kadar yavaş? Çabuk. İnternet. Ha? Var bir yerlerde var. Neyse bakarsınız, söylersiniz. Ve 5 gibi 10 gibi bir oran. Bir sürü yazı var. Şimdi yapay zeka ile bu Sümer tabletlerini okursak biz ne yaparız? Belki bir sürü şey öğreneceğiz. Formüller bilmem neler falan. O günkü yaşantıyla ilgili. 10 ila 15'miş bak, düşük yani. %85'i okunmamış. So Mezopotamyalılar science olarak değil de religious olarak interest etmişler. Dünya vesaire, uzay, yıldız şu vesaire. Daha çok studying the manner in which the gods had ordered the universe. Biraz o taraftalar. Burada Babil, Sümer'in arkasından Babil. Aslında aynı şey. Bu tablette 1800 BC olarak şey yapılmış. Sayı tablosu var. Ve A kare artı B kare eşittir C kareyi formülle karekök almayı bilmedikleri için tablo yapmışlar. Bununla bu kenarları böyle olanın köşesi böyledir. Kenarı böyle olanın köşesi böyledir diye tabloyu kile yazmış adam. Demek ki bunu bir yerde kullanıyor. Yani Pisagor. Pisagor değil daha bu çok daha önce. Ama A kare artı B kare eşittir C kareyi yazıyor. Şey olarak sayılarla. Sağdaki tabloda. Gene bu adamlar the same guys recorded the motions of the stars, planets and the moon. So they introduced the base 60 instead of using 10, base 10 or 100, they have base 60. That's why we have 1 hour as 60 minutes, 1 minute 60 seconds, right? So that's why we have those. So, or 360 degrees. 360 degrees is related to the sun. Because of the 365 days, we are at the same position in the orbit, probably same. So 360 is known as 1 degree for each day. Each day is divided into 60. That is also divided into 60. So 60, 60, 60 things is the invention of the Babylonians or Sumerians. Solar year, lunar month, 7 days. Why do we have 7 days? So those are invented in those time. All subsequent varieties of scientific astronomy is in India, in Hellenistic, in Greece. I wouldn't say Greece, it's Hellenistic time. And in the West is subsequent descendants of the Babylonian astronomy, Babil. And there was Egypt at the same time, and earlier. They invented pyramids. They also taught the tourism revenue after 4,000 years of their country. So even today, those kings are bringing money to their country because of the tourists. So post and lintel, this kind of structure was a construction technique, was probably invented by Egyptians. 3, 4, 5 right triangle. Because measurement was important, because there was flood all the time. After the flood, they had to find the location of farms for the villagers. Another thing, in Egypt, in Mesopotamia, Europe until 1700s, in Anatolia, in Ottomans, not many people talk about it. It wasn't slavery, it wasn't a direct slavery, but it was an indirect slavery, societal slavery in France, in Germany, in all the Europe. What was the name for it? The slavery was serfdom. Serfler diyoruz ya. Görmüşsünüzdür tarih dersinde. Serfdom. They had to they had to stay in, they have to stay in the same village. They couldn't move out. They had to do farming, and they had to pay half of it at least to the Lord in Europe. That continued until Industrial Revolution. And in Ottomans, what was the name? Tımar. So Tımar was the same as serfdom. The villagers had to stay there. They had to go if Sultan says, this village will go to Bosnia. They move. So it is not direct slavery, and they have to work. Then they have to pay half of it, something like that. So it is indirect slavery. That was the same in Egypt, in Babylonia, etc. So the rulers were owning all the lands, but this area calculations are only for something like renting. This is your place, this is your place, this is your place, and work. So you have no authority as a population member. Egypt was at the center of all the research and progress because it was very rich due to farming, and people were able to grow population-wise as well. Edwin Smith papyrus is one of the first medical instruments that explains what the life was. It talks about the brain, human brain, because they were into mummification. They were taking the brain out, etc. So they talked about brain, of course. They have the steps, like this is the last thing I'm going to talk about. For the disease, examination, diagnosis, treatment, and prognosis was written. Hastalığı gördün, inceledin, karar verdin, ilaç verdin, sonucunu da yazdın. Bu iyileşti, bu öldü. Adam medical research yapmış yani. Bu iyileşti, bu öldü diye yazarsan daha sonra ya 10 kişiye aynı ilaçtan verdik, 9'u öldü, bu sefer vermeyelim, başka bir şey verelim deme şansın var. Tamam mı? Yani scientific approach gibi kabul edilebiliyor. That was 1500 BC, and since the numbers are decreasing, around 1200 BC, there was a disease or famine or something like that. Most civilizations in Anatolia, there were Hittites, Egyptians, Babylonians. Around 1200 BC, there was a disaster. There was some kind of disaster, and humanity went back to farming rather than building big pyramids and statues, long big statues. They stopped doing it. They went back to farming and primitive life. Then after 500, 600 years later, Roman Empire, Hellenistic stuff improved again. We will continue from here next week. Thank you for coming.
Dersi çıkarla yeni aldım da dersi. Daha gelmedi. Toplama alıyor musunuz?
Bazen.
Bazen.
Az gelen olduğu zaman alıyorum.
Tamam.
Olacak.
Ya ben gelirim zaten de.
Bir dakika şu kaydı durdurayım.